So we're finally going to dive into the language itself and start learning from scratch. In these next lectures here, I'm going to introduce to you the Dart language. And I will assume that this is your first time to program. So I'm going to go really in details about the language, more specifically, really explaining what variables are, the types, and so forth. Now, again, if this is something that you've done before, you know what a variable is, you can skip around so that you don't get bored or anything, okay? But even then, I would really encourage you to go along with all the lectures, because even though you know already because you come perhaps from a different language, I will also include other things or gotchas, if you will, that you may not be aware of, especially if you're coming from a different language. But in Dart, things are a little bit different. Okay, if that makes any sense. So I don't want you to get bored, obviously, but at the same time, I want you to really get more out of this course as we go through this. And if anything, it's always nice to have a little refresher, even if you have done programming for many years or you've done this many times in a different language. Okay, does it make sense? Okay, so like I said also previously, I'm not going to be using our Dart pad because I just want to really use an IDE. But if you wish, at least for now, to use the Dart pad, be my guest. If you're still in the beginning stages, I would just follow exactly what I do and exactly what I use so that we can minimize the confusion coefficient here. Getting very technical. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to open my IntelliJ. You should have it installed by now. If not, just go back to those previous videos where I show you how to do that. It's not hard at all. Perfect. I actually have it open here, and I have this old Flutter project here, which we are not going to be using for a little while. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and say File. I'm going to create a new project as such. And I want just a Dart project like this. Make sure that takes a little bit of time. And we want the console application, command line application sample, okay? I'm going to go and say next. I'm going to give a name and make sure you put it somewhere where you're going to remember. And I have already where I want to put it. And this, I'm going to call this Hello Dart Vars. Okay, I'm going to say finish. I'm going to use this window indeed. And there we go. So now we have everything is synced up. And for you, it may take a few seconds. Either way, just let IntelliJ do its work and don't try to force anything, because when you try to force things, sometimes things don't work out, and we don't want that. Okay. All right. Perfect. So let's get to this. So right away, you notice we have a few things that have happened. So we have this import thing, which we don't know what it is, and we'll talk later about it. Okay. Do not worry. But then we have this hello world, and then we have this hello world dot vars dot calculate. Seems like it's calling something, right? But we don't know about that yet. Okay. Well, hint, hint. Actually, this calculate is indeed calling a method from our hello.vars class somewhere that's being imported. And I did a little bit Googling. It seems like, so actually let me run this real quick so you can see. It says hello world 42. Apparently, this 42 is in reference to a book of some sort that somebody wrote. It's a geeky book, and so it's an inside joke, if you will. So if you want to know more about that, you can just go ahead and Google why does Dart hello world shows the calculate and spits out 42, something like that, and you will get the whole story or history behind it. Okay, but for now we're just going to get rid of all of this, because honestly we don't need it. Let's not forget our quote there. And as it is, I'm going to get rid of this import as well, because we don't need that as well. So now we're going to just run this, and all it does is says hello world. Now at the bottom here you see, right, we have our console. This is where all the code that we're printing out inside here in our code is going to show the results here. Okay, it says process finished, exit time, and so forth. So we have our console at the bottom here. To the left, we have our project. So if you notice the project, it's pretty big because it has a lot of dependencies, a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts that we don't really need to know about it so much right now, right? That's the beauty of using a well-established language or an IDE. But you notice also, importantly, that our main.dart is inside of our bin. And we have libraries, we have all sort of things. Okay, if you click this, notice it says int calculate. Oh, see? So what we were seeing actually was coming from our library. So it was a file, as you can see here, that just returned 6 times 7. Okay, if the returns or methods or function or whatever makes no sense, no problem, we'll get there. Okay, so I'm just giving you a little tour here. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so now let's take a look at what's happening here. Simply what's happening here is that we have our main method. So a method or function is just an enclosed piece of code, and whatever it's inside is going to be called, and then something happens. So this is the entry point, as we call it. So every program needs to have an entry point where things are executed. If we were to take this print, I'm going to take it and put it outside here. Notice we have a problem because it's saying it's not inside of a function body, therefore this makes no sense. So the whole program is just spitting out, it's confused. It's like, what's going on, right? That's the reason why it has to be inside of our main. Okay? There we go. Now inside there we have this print method. It will learn more about that. So we're just saying print what we want to print, hello world, right? Which is exactly what's happening here. Okay. Now let's talk about the basics of programming. Now these concepts that I'm going to show you right now are not just for Dart. So if this is your first language, then this will be very helpful. If this is not, then I apologize. You just have to either fast forward or just be patient, okay? Perfect. So what I'm going to teach you now is just something that is all about programming in general. It's not language specific. Although the syntax changes language to language, but the basics of what is a programming language or the pieces, if you will, of programming are all the same, okay? Any programming language should have what we call a variable. So essentially what a variable is just a spot in memory or just a bucket to hold a value. Now what is important here is that this value is a value that can vary. Okay, this bucket holds something that can vary. That's the name variable. Okay, so how do we create a variable? Because we want to create a bucket that we can hold something and then do something with it. That's the whole idea, the basic idea when we come to talk about programming and computation, right? We find place in the memory and we say we're going to put something in that memory, right? In this case, we can say we want to put a string. So I can go ahead and say, in Dart, I'm going to go ahead and say var for variable. Okay, that's the keyword. And I'm going to say country as such. And I'm going to set it to something. I'm going to put inside of double quotes. I'm going to say Mozambique and semicolon. Okay, so what are we doing here? We're just saying we're setting Mozambique string. This is called a string because we have double quote to this bucket called country, which is a variable. That's all. So equal means we're setting whatever is to the right into whatever is to the left, country in this case. So now I can very easily just get rid of all this and just pass in country. And you notice here also the beauty of using an IDE, integrated development environment, is at the moment that start typing, guesses as to what is it that I may want to invoke or to get. In this case, it's country. Just hit enter, and there we go, country. Now, you can imagine if I save this and run, what do you think is going to happen? Voila, Mozambique. Okay, because now we said print what? We're going to print whatever we have inside of this bucket here called country, which contains Mozambique. Okay, now the beauty also here, you notice that I can, with Dart, you can actually get rid of all of the double quotes. You can just put single quotes as such. I'm going to take this Mozambique. In fact, I misspelled Mozambique. Ah, shameful. Do you know where Mozambique is? Trivia. Okay, so now it's the same thing. This will be seen by the compiler as the same thing. String, essentially, right? String. Mozambique. If we save this and give it a quick run, it's going to do the same thing. Mozambique. Okay, so whether you want to put double quotes or one quote, that is fine. There are certain cases where double quote, it's probably appropriate, but in this case, the idea here is that to create a string, you just can put double quote or single quotes. It all works the same. Very nice. So now you learn how to create a very simple variable, and you added something to that variable. Very simple. Okay, so what I want you to do is to create a few other variables so that you can then print them out. Okay? Perfect. I'll see you in the next video.